Hi, everybody. This is Theoral. You can find me on the Card Text podcast with Bob and Scott, or on the Marvel Champions Discord, where I like to answer rules questions, or here on YouTube with my various Marvel Champions videos. I've been away for a little while. I took a break after finishing Mutant Genesis and doing some homebrew scenarios for a bit. The game was kind of on a break for a while there, leading into Next Evolution, but Next Evolution is out now, and I figured I'd get back into it and play the Mojo Scenarios that I haven't played, play the X-Men I haven't played, and then get into Next Evolution here in a few weeks. And by the time I'm finishing up Next Evolution, we should have the next set of heroes out, and that should all work out pretty well. So, yeah, I'm gonna go down to once a week recording here. Twice a week was a little much for me. It turns out. So I'll be doing once a week. Probably go ahead and do some playthrough videos. At least I'll have like 8 of them, so the next 8 weeks or so. By the time that's over, though, I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do, so we'll see. I may post other kinds of videos too, not playthrough videos. That could be interesting. If you're interested in other kinds of content, let me know, and maybe I can do something. So with all that said, we're going to go ahead and start the Mojo Scenarios here and play with some of the heroes that I have not yet played with on this channel, although I've played with all of these heroes in other circumstances. So this is Rogue, and we're going to play Rogue with a protection deck. This is the protection deck that I made for her after I got Mutant Genesis, more or less. I've mentioned on the Discord, but actually for my own set of physical cards, I keep like 20 some odd decks built at once. It's one of the advantages of only running 6 allies in a deck is that I don't have to worry about someone monopolizing all of the allies. And so this is sort of similar to that deck. When I build decks for this, especially because they're solo decks, I like them to be a little bit stronger than the decks that I build for physical cards, because I primarily play 2-player with that. So it's, I try to build these to a slightly higher degree. But this is more or less the feel of that deck. So the idea behind this deck, this protection deck for Rogue, is to get Retaliate 1 from Dauntless. In multiplayer, that's of course great, because if you can get Retaliate 1 from, if you can get Retaliate from an aspect card, and then you can get Stalwart from touching a friend, from touching the other player, putting touch on the other player, then you can play something like Going Rogue, and it's a 1-cost remove 3 threat confuse an enemy, which is great for value. So it's just fun to be able to do those kinds of combos. This is solo. That's not going to work, sort of. So one thing with solo Rogue is that touched has to be attached to another character. You can't touch it. You can't put touched on Rogue. And that really just messes with Rogue's solo gameplay, in my opinion, and kind of screws up things. So I don't keep that rule. I'll put touched on Rogue if that makes sense. Now it does. The one thing that it does do is it allows her to recur her cards a little more easily, because you don't have to have a Gambit in play. And that's, in some sense, it's an unfair situation to be allowed to be in, I guess, for someone compared to someone who doesn't allow touch to be played on Rogue. I do not put touched on Rogue in multiplayer games, because I have another player over there. I can always just put touched on them and get Stalwart, and then I can search through their discard pile, which is way more fun anyways. Particularly in protection, though, touched is kind of like, well, if you look at this deck, there's not a lot of events. All the protection events are not great events to have. So the only friendly character you can put touched on for any superpower shenanigans is Gambit. And that's just kind of annoying. So the fact that Rogue loses so much power in solo because of just not being able to put touched on Rogue is frustrating. It doesn't have to be it's not nearly as bad if you're playing a deck that's not built with the kind of focus that this deck is built with. There's ways, obviously, to make event recursion pretty powerful, even if you're pretty much restricted to aspects, or you can just, concentrate on getting Gambit out and play that way. That's fine. I'm not opposed to any of those playstyles, but this is what I want to do, and so I'm going to allow touch to go onto Rogue at times when it makes sense. So yeah, the idea here is you get Retaliate 1 through Dauntless, and then touch either an ally or another player character and get the extra bonuses from this. It's really fun when you have an aerial um, ally player, when someone's playing any character that can go aerial. Then you can touch that aerial character, and then you get Stalwart and Aerial and Retaliate, and you get the triple bonus on her events, and that's just fun. I like that, but that's not really. I guess that's the point of having Dauntless. That's why Dauntless is in this deck, and that's kind of the idea behind the deck. But it's not all the deck has. So let's talk about what else the deck has going for it. So we have Death Focus and X-Gene because these are great, cheap resource cards that Rogue can get out, and they help her play her cards. We have Nerves of Steel because we're playing a protection deck, and we have a good number of defense events, as well as Bulletproof Belle, which also costs 1, and Nerves of Steel can pay for it. And that's just a lovely place to be. We have Endurance because Dauntless, and if you're going to run Dauntless, you need hit points to be able to go to be able to take some damage and not have Dauntless turn off. Endurance is helpful for that. Since we're going to mostly not take any damage, Unflappable is handy. It's kind of a little bit of extra resources. It's not as good as these cards, although it's not necessarily a ton worse either. All these cards can miss on any given turn, which is unfortunate. Since she does kind of need the economy, but it's what it is. We have Sidestep. Sidestep is especially nice in her because it's a 3 damage reduction. So Take No Defense is not exactly easy to do with a 2 defense hero. I usually do it with a 3 defense hero because then you can play an Armored Vest and get to 4 defense. Then you defend against an enemy that has, say, 3 attack, like Magog has. And if he gets a 3 boost and you have a +2 defense, you have 6 defense, he has 6 attack, you block it all. That's perfect defense. With a hero with 2 defense, that's a little tougher. So with the hero that has 3 defense base, +2 defense is often enough. As long as they only get a 2 boost, you're fine. And of course, it works really well against 2 attack villains because then you don't even need Armored Vest. And when you get Armored Vest, you're up to 4 defense, which means with a 2 attack villain, you're blocking a 2 boost. Anyways, the point is 3 defense versus a villain typically is much better for perfect defense. But Rogue's kind of weird, and she doesn't have 3 defense, and we still want to try and run this perfect defense deck with her because it helps us keep Dauntless on. So one of Rogue's cards is Bulletproof Belle, which cancels all damage and gives her a tough status. And so that's a nice way to perfect defend. And so that's great. Another thing is with 2 defense and a 3 prevention, that's 5, which works most of the time. I put Jump Flip in here, which only prevents 2 because I thought it prevented 3 at some point in time in my life, and I just forgot that it only prevented 2. But whatever, the deck's built, it has Jump Flip. So that's fine. She can prevent 2 damage and remove 2 threat, which is really helpful. And then we have Judoka Skill, and Judoka Skill is nice because it lets her, when you use it, it's kind of like you have 4 defense, which puts you back into that perfect defense realm. So Judoka Skill is a little more expensive than an Armored Vest, but I find it to be a little bit better with a character with lower defense when trying to run something kind of like a perfect defense build, which is what this kind of is. Now, I don't have Hard to Ignore in here, which is a mainstay of perfect defense and nice threat removal consistency, because, again, I'm not necessarily defending all the time. I'm not getting tons of perfect defense out. Like even getting Unflappable out is not really a huge deal for this deck. It's helpful because sometimes you defend, and it's nice to get card draw out of that. But it's very unreliable. If we get Unflappable down, I don't expect to use it every turn. It's just not how this deck exactly works. It's kind of a near perfect defense deck, is what I would call it. So that's what that is. As far as allies, we have Jocasta. Jocasta is really useful because she can recur Bulletproof Belle, which is amazingly strong. And then you know you have it, and that makes it easy to use. Starhawk is in here because he's an aerial ally, and he's a good protection ally. So replaying him constantly lets us have an aerial ally to touch, which is nice because then we can touch Starhawk. And then if we move touch to somebody else, we're still aerial, unlike if we touch another ally. and then move touch to the villain, in which case we lose aerial. So it can be very difficult to get multiple of these abilities out at one time. Starhawk helps us to do that a little bit, and he's cool. We have Polaris, who's a good X-Men, and she can give us tough statuses to help us, and Nightcrawler, who can block all damage, and Professor X, who offers some extra confuse, which is just really useful in solo, and so he's here too. Primarily because this is a solo deck. In my actual paper deck, or paper card deck, I don't know. My actual card deck, I don't think I have Professor X. I may not have Nightcrawler either. I'm not 100% sure. But that's this deck. Alright, so we talked about all the cards. Now it's time to start a game. Oh, one thing I didn't mention is that with Dauntless out, we get Retaliate 1. And if this is on the villain, we get Retaliate 1. And since we want to play Bulletproof Belle, actually, because we want to defend, because this is kind of a defense deck, we actually often put Touched on the villain anyways. And then we have Retaliate 2. And Retaliate 2 is good. If you've never played a character that has Retaliate 2, if you've never played a defense kind of Thornsy deck, this is actually a really quick Thorns deck to get online. And then you're doing a lot of work when you're defending, and that's fun to do too, in my opinion. So that's where that all is. All right, let's see what we got here. Okay, cool. Hey, we got Dauntless to start with. That's fun. And Southern Cross. And Bulletproof Belle is good to hold. This is an entertaining hand. So the only thing is we didn't get much in the way of resource acceleration. So the question is, do I want to try to draw into resources? Bulletproof Belle's not going to do us any good if we've played Southern Cross, because the villain's already going to be stunned. So we'll just have that in our discard pile. That's fine. Hopefully we don't draw Jocasta. Hey, we got energy transfer. That's interesting. Okay. And all of our superpower adaptations too. So energy transfer is really good in general. It does 2 damage and readies us. But I don't know that I'm going to use it. Okay, so we're going to... but I guess I'll hold it, because there's nothing else I can do. Alright, we're going to spend 1, to play Dauntless, which gives us Retaliate 1. We're going to put Touched on Rogue, the thing that I said that I do, because I would be able to touch another player if this was a multiplayer game. We're going to play Southern Cross. Southern Cross does 6 damage to Magog. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and stuns him. And then we draw a card. And it's Judoka skill. And we can't play Judoka skill, and we can't play energy transfer. So we can thwart, because might as well. We don't actually want to defeat Magog immediately, because we get an encounter card when that happens. Although we do have to defeat him, that's how we win the game. But that's fine. We mostly did that to stun him. So I might hang on to Judoka skill and discard energy transfer. Try and get the defense stuff worked out. Alright, draw to 5 cards. This is interesting. Alright. Actually touched, I guess. Stays on Rogue. Still on Rogue, because I can take damage from an encounter card. Okay. This goes up by 2 threat per turn. Magog is stunned, so he does not attack us. And we get an encounter card. If you've not played Mojo Scenarios, Magog has a forced response. After he attacks and damages a character, we put 2 ratings counters on the champion. If Magog gets 5 ratings counters on here, we flip this, and on its flip side, if it gets 10 rating counters, he wins. We have challengers. If there's 5 rating counters on it, we flip it, and if it gets to 10 ratings counters, we win. So the goal is to get these ratings counters and not let him get ratings counters. For that purpose, perfect defense is really useful. So this near perfect defense deck is not ideal, because it'd be better if it was perfect defense against Magog. But hey, you know, it's still a protection deck, which is what I really want to be running against Magog anyways. So just to explain what we're trying to do here, we're trying to stop Magog's attacks. We definitely don't want him to be damaging us. That's why Southern Cross was an important play there. Okay. Also, we are playing with the sitcom modular. So I picked a modular at random from the Mojo modulars. I rolled a 5. That was sitcoms. And so we have sitcoms. The printed text box of each support we control as if it were blank. Okay, well that's not a support. That's not a support. So we're okay. And now I have to make a choice. This is quite annoying. I wish I had not run def focus. I would like to get def focus down because it will help me to play my cards more often. The challenge here is that I would like to Southern Cross him again, which is going to stun him. And then we're going to get an encounter card. And that's going to be annoying because 2 encounter cards can be rough. But on the plus side, he doesn't attack us. I'm not super happy about having touched on Rogue in this circumstance. The reason is because with 2 encounter cards, it's a decent chance he gets an attack. And if we have Bulletproof Belle, I would like to be able to play it. But the trick is, with all of this, is that I don't need... I don't need to draw a card. See, I could just play Judoka Skill, which gets my defense up, and I could play Southern Cross, which will stun him. And then I'm fine. Like, I thwart. I'm ready to defend in case he gets an extra attack. And that seems okay. Sure, we're going to just do that. And it's skipping setup cards, which I do not love skipping setup cards, but I could just have played Def Focus. I have taken him to 0. He is now stunned. So when he goes to 0 hit points, he resets to 10 per player. We get 2 per player ratings counters on the challengers, and we deal ourselves a face down encounter card. Okay. Now we're going to thwart for 2. And he's stunned, so we're going to stay hero form. Draw 5 cards. Look at that. That is a Bulletproof Belle, which is excellent. Ooh, and X Gene, so if I can go Alter Ego, which with Go and Rogue I probably can, everything looks good. Alright, so 2 threats. He's stunned, so he does not attack us. We get a second encounter card. The first one is the Odd Couple. Why are we getting all sitcom cards? The second one... that makes me feel like I just did not shuffle this deck. He hasn't... okay, I'm just going to shuffle this. Okay. Oh, I guess I should have kept Family Matters. Okay, we got Mojo in the middle instead as our first encounter card. I shouldn't have done that because if it had been an attack or anything weird, that would not have made any sense. It's still... okay, we're caught off guard. That's annoying. I have to choose whether I want to lose Judoka Skill. Well, Judoka Skill's temporary anyways. I'd rather keep Dauntless. And he got Surge of Aggression. So Surge of Aggression gives him +1/+1 stats. He still didn't attack me. Dork. And we get an extra ratings counter if we defeat it, which is nice because that'll pop us up to 5 when we defeat him. So he has bonus stats. Bonus stats are not amazing, so that's fine. I didn't end up having to play Bulletproof Belle, which is cool. So, okay, if I play Going Rogue, I draw 1 card. It's probably not going to matter, but I guess I will. So we'll spend 2 resources to play Going Rogue, because that clears this and confuses him, which is the important bit. And we'll draw 1 card. And then we will flip to Alter Ego. This is our top status. Touched card. And we'll play X Gene. Oh, before we did that, I punched him for 2. 6 card hand. Alright. There's Jocasta, who's fun. And Gambit. And Starhawk. All of my allies. Alright, 2 threat. He's no longer confused. I get an encounter card. It's the surprise contender. Okay, surprise contender. That's fun. Let's see, what can I do about that? So, okay, so this is where things get kind of annoying. So when you flip the challengers, you get the surprise contender. So if I defeat the surprise contender, that pushes me up to 4 counters. That's a thing I could do, but it's not super helpful at the moment. I think I would rather have the surprise contender be in existence. Almost what I would rather do is play Southern Cross. So Southern Cross only costs me 2 cards. This seems to work. So that'll deal enough damage to Magog. 6 damage. And then I can punch him for the 8 damage. That gets me 3 counters on challengers, which, as noted, would bring this guy out anyways. And then I don't have to defeat him an extra time. If I move touch to myself so that I can draw a card, then I also draw a card, I can play Jocasta, I can get Bulletproof Belle. And I can use Bulletproof Belle on the surprise contender. So, I'm happy about that as a strategy. So let's do it. 1, 2, 3. Touching myself, Southern Cross against Magog. 6 damage and a stun status. And I draw a card. Oh hey, it's a double resource. That's cool. I can hold a card. And I'm actually okay with that. It's just a matter of whether I want to hold Nerves of Steel or Gambit. X-Gene generates wild resources for identity events, which is nice because it lets us play Southern Cross. It also lets us play Bulletproof Belle. I'm gonna hold Gambit, I think, because Gambit's a good ally. And where's our Bulletproof Belle? There she is. Okay, so we have Bulletproof Belle on Jocasta. I can punch him for 2. That knocks this off, moves this to 5, and then after it flips to this side, search the encounter deck for surprise contender. If it is already in play, give it a tough status. So there he is with his tough status. Jocasta now can go ahead and thwart the main scheme for 2. Magog is stunned. Gambit's in hand. This is all fine. Draw. It's the jacket and endurance and all those fun cards. Alright. 2 threat. Magog again does not attack me. Surprise contender does. I'll go ahead and use X-Gene to play Bulletproof Belle. He's villainous, so he gets a boost card. But I prevent all damage from this, and I gain a tough status. Okay, I got that. Anyways, my supports are blank, which I have none. I have Retaliate 1, so he actually takes a damage instead of me. And then I get an encounter card. And it's Advance Magog Schemes for 3. The tough thing about solo, especially in this particular scenario, is that this can just be completed, like, with no trouble at all. Okay, now I have no cards. Now this is where having no resources is a little bit of a hindrance. I could play Rogue's Jacket, and then I could thwart. And Jocasta could thwart, and everything would be fine. Alternatively, I could play Gambit, and then we could all thwart. Surprise contender is still going to be here. Magog's still going to punch me. I'm not going to draw Bulletproof Belle, so no help there. I'm still probably going to touch Magog for Retaliate, because Retaliate's useful. Family Matters is going to make that go up by an extra 1 because of Mojo in the middle. If I went, if I went Alter Ego and Exhausted, I could clear Family Matters. I could draw a card. This would definitely get completed. He would get 2 counters. Doesn't seem necessary for me to do that. So maybe I won't. Jump Flip actually could be really useful here. Against the Surprise Contender. And pretty much defend the Surprise Contender 100%. I can just hold Jump Flip. How many Jump Flips do I still have in my deck? That's a question to ask, right? So I have 1 Jump Flip in my discard pile. Yes, 1. Okay, and 1 in my hand, and there's 1 in my deck. No guarantee I draw it. On the one hand, I would love to get my jacket out. And Endurance. Dauntless is obviously a waste, but... So let's make it Gambit out, which is helpful. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can't quite kill the Surprise Contender on this attack. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's 1 threat on this. Honestly, taking it all the way to 0 seems like it's not entirely necessary. It's going to go up by 3 anyways, which means Magog's pretty likely to complete it if he schemes. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and let Gambit do some damage here. That should set us up pretty nicely. Oh, now that's what hurts. And that's why I would love to have Nerves of Steel out. I have no energy resources. No cards I can play. This is where I greatly regret my situation. Okay. Magog attacks me. This is fine. I'm tough. He hits me for 5, which takes away my tough status, and he takes 2 damage. Surprise Contender attacks me with a boost. I'm going to defend this. It's a 1 boost, so I didn't have to defend it. And I'm just going to Jump Flip it and be sad that that's not an identity card. Canceling all of the damage and dealing 2 to him. Then I get a single encounter card, Stage Fright. I am confused, and we place 2 threat on the main scheme. That is a good reason for why I didn't want there to be 4. That's okay. This goes up to 2. I get touched back. On the plus side, the main scheme is now at 0. So that's not half bad. I'm going to spend 2 resources to play Judoka skill. Gambit is going to attack the Surprise Contender. As an interrupt, he's going to deal 1 damage to Magog. Surprise Contender is defeated. I get 2 counters. 2 ratings counters. And I could go Alter Ego, but that would chance him completing his scheme again. I don't really want him to do that. I'm a little concerned that I have to beat him twice more. That's a lot of times to beat him. I may have forgotten to give myself an encounter card when I beat him the second time. Did I forget? Well, you can comment down below if I forgot. I don't remember. I could think about it. When I got the Surprise Contender, those cards were all boosts. I got an advance. Now, Surge of Aggression was off the first one, right? Okay, I'm pretty sure I forgot to give myself an encounter card there. So I should have had an extra encounter card. And that would have prevented me from playing Judoka skill. Okay. Well, that answers that question. I'm going to go alter ego. I'm going to discard upgrade from my hand. If I have more upgrades in my discard pile than play, then I can discard this. I have in my discard pile, I don't understand the ordering. I have 2 copies of Judoka Skill and 1 copy of Death Focus. There it is. Judoka Skill, Nerves of Steel, Death Focus. Plenty of upgrades. This goes away. I discard my obligation. I get to draw a card. That would have been a nice card to have a minute ago. Gambit has 2 consequential. I was forgetting to put consequential on him. Okay, well I can't play Going Rogue because I'm alter ego. I'm not even gonna hold it. I'll play Nightcrawler. I don't need side set. I'm gonna hold Nightcrawler. That'll keep me from shuffling. I'm gonna want to exhaust. This is tough. Alright, Magog schemes for 3. There's actually an acceleration, so that's this scheme completed again. Pump up the crowd. That's what I was hoping for. That's a very helpful thing to get. So it begins with 4. If the champion is on its cheering crowd side, it is not, so I do not have to put an extra threat there, which is great. All right, now I have a whole bunch of choices for which ally I'm going to play. First thing I'm going to exhaust and get rid of Family Matters. I have no supports to exhaust. That draws me a card and deals me an encounter card, but that's fine. I should win in a couple turns. Not going to win this turn, sadly, but that's okay. All right, we're going to flip the hero form. So for 3, we can play Polaris. For 3, we could play Professor X. Yep, those are things we could do. Professor X would be able to give him a confuse. He could ready me, and he's got 3 thwart, which is half the reason I would want to play him. But I could play Nightcrawler, who has 2 thwart, and that's enough. But I could use Gambit to hit him for 3, which would be pretty good. Yeah. And I could hit him for 2, and then he would die. Yep. All right. That looks like how we win. So we're going to spend 3 to play Professor X. Professor X is going to ready me. We're going to spend 1, 2, 3 to play Polaris. Give me a tough status. Polaris is going to thwart for 1. Professor X is going to thwart for 3. That completes the scheme. When defeated, place 1 counter on the challengers. Then Gambit is going to spend his last counter and his last health in order to deal 3 damage to Magog. And I'm going to punch Magog for 2. And I'm going to touch Magog, so I have Retaliate 2. Then I'll ready all my cards, and I'll draw to my hand size. He gets 2 threat. He attacks me for 4 damage, but I'm tough, so I don't care. Instead, he takes 2 damage, and this is completed. We win the game. We have gotten the challengers to cheer for us, and with their cheering, that means that we are the victors. That gives us an encounter card. Then we would get another encounter card. If you were curious how this phase would have played out, firstly, I would have become stunned and taken 2 damage, which is annoying. Then he would have schemed for 1, and we would have gotten the one with the breakup, which is a hazard icon and an acceleration icon. Although it's not that bad. Just discard 3 cards. You just have to be alter ego. Discard 3 cards, choose a player, which would be me. I would draw 2 cards. So there we go. That is the game. So yeah, leave me a comment. Let me know if you enjoyed this playthrough with Rogue. This is one of my favorite Rogue decks. It's all kinds of crazy wonky. It does not always work. It worked really, really well today. Um, Although I did end up putting touched on Rogue, which I know, is against the rules, but I don't really care. I play with enough house rules these days that one just seems like, why can Rogue not draw a card? Like, that's the only thing I want it for. It's not like I used the fact that I was stalwart. Although I could have gotten rid of my confused status, I guess, if I'd wanted to. I didn't even think about that. Could have cleared my confused status. But yeah, I didn't use it. All I used it for, I didn't use it to like recur cards, which is the place where I can see an argument that being able to touch yourself, put touch on yourself, use superpower adaptation to grab an energy channel, exhaust, do something, move energy channel to the villain, heal 2 damage, deal 2 damage, and ready, is strong. I get it. That's a pretty strong ability. But you know what? I mean, Rogue's good. Don't get me wrong. She's fine. She's a good hero, I think. Even with this wonky deck, I think there's probably better decks you could build for her that would be even stronger. But yeah, I don't know. She should be able to put touch on herself because it just enables things that it doesn't enable when it can't be touched to herself. Of course, this is not some kind of crazy trait deck, and I know a lot of people like to build trait decks that feel like that's the main power of touched. I don't think that's the main power of touched. I think the main power of touched is that it gives you these abilities, and that also turns on her events, which is useful. But I think honestly, a decent chunk of it is just getting the ability itself. Well, for retaliate, putting it on the villain, gaining retaliate 1. Retaliate 1's a pretty good power. Black Panther, that's like what Black Panther has. That's all he has is retaliate 1, and Rogue gets it too. And she gets it with the option to do other things sometimes, and it makes her events better. I don't know. She's good. So yep, that's the end of this one. Next time we will fight Spiral, and I hope you come back for it. And I'll see you next time.